Hi, welcome to Infodumpies. My name's Brianne. I'm autistic, I have AuDHD, my pronouns are she, her, and I am actually a composite of an artist's idea of peak performance. So, sorry, this is what peak performance looks like.
That's fair. Hi, I'm Violet. My pronouns are she, her. I have ADHD, and I am actually a creature of indeterminate origin. It's one of X-Files kind of lost episodes kind of thing. Don't worry about it.
And our guest today is Taryn.
Hi, Taryn.
Their pronouns are she, they. They're AuDHD like me. And if anyone needs to know what they were doing on the night of February 21st, they were hanging out with me. I can corroborate it with receipts from the Bennigans we went to together. They ordered a quesadilla. Hi, Taryn.
Hi. It was delicious, by the way.
It
Good,
was.
good.
The quesadilla you did eat on February 21st. If
Yes.
that's the date I
Yes.
said the first time, I've already forgotten.
And I
remembered that quesadilla well into the night.
And I also saw you there
It's a
and took
Bennigan's.
many
It would repeat
pictures
on you.
Betting, yeah.
that I no longer have.
Taryn, what are you going to tell us about today?
So today I'm going to be telling the story of Evelyn Nesbit, who is a model, singer, actor, dancer, burlesque dancer at age 55. She was an incredibly talented woman with an incredibly terrible life.
Oh.
And
I know what all of that's like. Every single thing you've listed down to being 55, I know what all of that's like.
And being a dancer and
Yeah.
actress and all of those. Yeah.
I have a brief content warning for this episode. Though I do not go into detail, there are allusions to child abuse and neglect, rape, and physical and mental abuse. However, we're not going to start the story with Evelyn Nesbit. We're going to be starting the story with what introduced me to Evelyn Nesbit, and that was Charles Dana Gibson. And he was a post-impressionist pen and ink art illustrator for Life magazine in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He went on to become the editor of Life and then eventually the owner of Life magazine. So he was known worldwide for his illustrations. And he was what launched him kind of into the forefront of being like the world's illustrator for magazines was his creation of what became known as the Gibson Girl. And the Gibson Girl is the iconic representation of the beautiful and the independent American woman of the turn of the century. The turn of the century meaning 1900s and not the 2000s, which we have to start calling the 2000s the turn of the century because fuck my life.
The turn of the other century.
The turn of the previous century. The turn of the previous
The turn
century.
of the century before last.
Yeah. And so one of my all-time favorite forms of artwork is the post-impressionism era that leads into the Roaring 20s and the early 30s. Because that's when we get Toulouse-Lautrec and all of the really weird abstract artwork, as well as the Art Nouveau and the Art Deco movements.
Yeah. The new wave of the art world.
The new wave of the art world. And it's like we start to get away from realism in that era. However, with the Gibson Girls, it holds on to that realism in terms of like Charles only knew how to draw one woman.
That's most artists.
Syndrome.
He had same face syndrome, but he also had same body type syndrome.
Oh.
So it's like, in the 1980s when they had any cartoon that had more than one female character in it, it was just the same body, just recolored.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like that, except they were wearing like slightly different corsets.
Yeah, so it's if comics would have been a thing, he would have been like, yeah, I do comics.
Yeah, he would definitely have been a comic illustrator, because he was a a political cartoonist.
Oh, interesting.
Like he would actively, like he actually did do political cartoons.
Not to be shady, but like I know what the Gibson girl looks like, but since we brought up comics, now I'm just imagining J. Scott Campbell girls.
J. Scott Campbell girls.
I would burn the world to the ground and salt the earth before I called the J. Scott Campbell of the world the new Charles Dana Gibson.
Oh no, not by any means. Just no. Charles Dana Gibson.
I
had
feel
something.
like where am I forgetting his name? He passed away recently.
George Perez,
thank you. Oh my god, he is like one of my all-time favorite comic artists, and I
got to meet him. He did a signing at our store, and he was the sweetest, kindest, gentlest person I ever was like the quote-unquote handler for when we had a signing, because it was usually like, someone needs to be normal to this person coming for a signing. And I talked to George Perez, and he was like, oh, there's someone I work with at Boom Studios named Brianne. Are all of you this lovely and kind? Thank you so much for this.
So sweet.
And he was like, his family came to visit, and he was like handing out gum to his family, and then he just looks at me and he's like, you want a piece of gum too? And I was like, I would love a piece of gum, George Perez.
God, I love that man so much.
And he was always, he didn't really ask for a lot. He was so grateful. It was one of those moments where it's like the opposite of don't meet your heroes. Or it's like, he's just he had very good grandpa energy. Yeah. But anyway.
It's like Dave Grohl in the music industry. Whereas like Dave Grohl is just like a really good dad.
Yeah. Just very good energy.
Yeah.
But I continue. But I could go off on comic stuff forever.
Well, I mean, we're talking about art right now. Yeah. But no, I feel like if anybody has at least the same artistic styling, like this, George Perez, I feel, was very inspired by Charles Dana Gibson.
I completely see that.
Yeah. Whereas, like, because I love George. I love him immensely, and I was very upset by his passing. But he only draws one woman.
Yeah. But the woman he draws, though, unlike a lot of comic artists with same face, same body syndrome, is not the exploitative, how can I show both her tits and her ass at the same time, put her in ungodly positions. It was, like Violet, he's most well known for his Wonder Woman work.
Yeah, and he from 1987 to like the early 2000s.
Yeah, I'm not as big of a comic nerd, but you say Wonder Woman, and I think I know the images that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for people our age, when we think of a Wonder Woman comic, it is probably thinking of the George Perez Wonder Woman design,
which is the post-crisis Wonder Woman for those out there who are slightly aware of Wonder Woman. Post-crisis being when they dropped Paradise Island and changed the name to Themyscira. Sorry, I could go on about Wonder Woman forever.
We should after this discuss like some comic themed episodes to do.
Also. Oh yeah, that would be a fun little run.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, continue.
Yeah.
I think that's an apt comparison because all of the women he draws are strong, independent, and not hypersexualized.
But still sexy.
Still sexy, but not hypersexualized. Yeah.
Like, will carry you out of a fire sexy.
Yeah, seductive, maybe.
Like, it's very, well, I don't know. I'm asexual. I don't know the name. I don't know how seductive works.
I wouldn't say seductive. There was no attempt to make them sexualized. It was just, that's a sexy woman who is strong. Like the same way that Instagram knows I like muscle mommies even when they're not trying to do something sexy. That kind of sexy.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So, Charles, he was a lot like that in terms of like he wanted to capture the independence of the modern woman. A lot of his designs, like because Brianne has seen the artwork, it's very, I feel like it's ethereal. Like that's my own opinion, is that these are beautiful, attractive, feminine women who are shown playing poker. They're shown like getting into fights with men, but kind of in a playful way. Like it's supposed to be like a funny, comical way. But it's the first time that we see women being shown with any agency in political cartoons, or even in just illustrations, period. I know like a lot of paintings had very independent women throughout the ages, but this was in people's homes. Like the Life magazine you could get for 10 cents off the newspaper stands. Like you can't go out and buy like just like a full-on 5x7 foot oil painting, but you can get this 10-cent magazine that has like 20 some odd drawings of these women just laying around in their undergarments, like throwing cards at each other or like just doing each other's hair, but like in a way that's not sexualized, which is the way that I feel George Perez drew all of his women. Like he never, I feel, never sexualized his women. And so that brought a very different image of women into the forefront of the mind. And this was also during the suffrage movement. And a lot of people would say that the Gibson girl, though independent, never got into politics. She was never into the suffrage movement. However, she shared a lot of ideas with what was considered the new woman. And the new woman was the antithesis of like the stay-at-home, must be seen but not heard, which was what people gravitated toward the Gibson girl, because she was more seen but not heard, whereas the new woman was in your face. I want equality. I want to be able to vote. I want to be in the workplace. Like, I want to do all of this stuff, and I want to disrupt the status quo. We can infer a lot from the terms that are used between these two particular illustrative styles, and that's Gibson girl and a new woman. Because we have this issue now. We have a lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about today now, but the term girl is always seen as the positive. It's seen as the young, vibrant, energetic, and whereas woman is seen as old, saggy boobs and swamp witch. And
love it. I love women.
I love women.
Women are fantastic. And like we see that today, where it's like the you go girl or the girl bossing movement of the MLMs and all that. MLMs as in multi-level marketing, not MLM as men love men. Oh god, I can't remember the term right now that people are starting to use, because the anti-MLM people are getting attacked for homophobia.
Oh no.
So I think they're going network marketing now. Like they're trying to, instead of saying MLM, they're trying to say network marketing. That's another podcast. I'm so sorry. There's like 5 different podcasts.
It's kind of like how the people posting about being the cishet people generally posting about being first-time moms are wondering why they're finding themselves getting a bunch of trans men content, and trans men are like, what is this? Oh, why am I getting this thing about babies? Yeah, so
yeah, FTM.
Fucking algorithms, man. Like, it's so yeah.
No.
So but yeah, so it's like we have these two opposing forces who generally want the same thing, but they're not on the same level. Not to say that Charles wasn't for the new woman, because he did illustrate for the new woman. And I just want to quickly say that the new woman was a term that was coined by a woman, a writer whose name was Sarah Grand, and this new woman archetype became the spearhead for the suffrage movement and demanding radical change for women in society, and disrupted what everybody knew about the fairer sex. People knew about the upper middle class fairer sex. Because anything below that...
Emphasis on the fairer also.
Yeah, all the... Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So, because of that, like, not to say that Charles didn't have politics, like, he wrote,
He
wrote and
didn't
drew.
overtly say anything, but they were kind of baked into the subject matter of some of the things he drew.
Exactly. So he was a really great figure for the time period that he was living in. However, going into the rest of the story, the best male person in this story, the rest of them can be categorized as men are trash and always have been.
Yep.
I don't mean to laugh at that,
Yep.
but I can't do anything else because I might cry.
I was gonna say, yeah,
But,
if you don't laugh, you might cry.
Yeah. So before we go into the rest of the story, I did want to briefly talk about Charles Gibson, why he's important to this story, even though the story is not about him. I just wanted to mention him because he is what introduced me to this story. So now that we know who Charles is and why he's important to our story, if even he barely touches on this story, we go into who the story is actually about, and that is Evelyn Florence Nesbit. And Evelyn Florence Nesbit was born in Pennsylvania on Christmas Day in 1884 or 1885. We don't know exactly because, in her own words, her mother would often change her date of birth so she could circumvent child labor laws.
Oh, lovely.
Oh,
What
So,
a lovely
we're immediately-
childhood.
Lovely.
What a lovely childhood she sounds like she had.
Yeah, so one thing about Evelyn that a lot of people like to say, which isn't necessarily true, is that she was the first Gibson girl. However, if she was either born in 1884 or 1885, that would have been 5 to 6 years before the first Gibson girl was illustrated or published into Life magazine, which was in 1890. So she would have been 6 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna say she wouldn't have been old enough.
oh
No,
yeah.
First
so she
Gibson girl
was
was
definitely
a
not
a
widow.
baby.
Yeah, just a cool widow
She was the
kid.
first Gibson baby, perhaps.
Yeah. She was a literal child.
Oh my god, I'm just picturing a little baby with a big pompadour hairdo
The number
like
of
the Gibson
pictures,
girls
like,
had.
do you remember that movie, The Little Princess?
Oh, that would be so
God,
cute.
I love that movie.
All of the little girls look like her. Evelyn Nesbit. So, she was born to her father, Winfield Scott Nesbit, who was an attorney, and the homemaker and child labor law denier, Evelyn Florence McKenzie. When I said Evelyn Florence Nesbit earlier, I meant Florence Evelyn Nesbit, and that's the daughter. Evelyn Florence Nesbit is the mother, so I'm going to be referring to them as Evelyn the mother and Evelyn the daughter.
It's like a Gilmore Girls
Okay.
situation.
It's a Gilmore Girl situation. Yes. Yeah. While her father was alive, Evelyn the daughter was encouraged to be curious, self-confident. She loved reading, and like to the point where her father like had her have an entire like little library all to herself. Some of the books that were in this small library were considered boy interest books.
The Roman
And
Empire.
then I wrote like the Roman Empire. I wrote scandalous next to that.
The Roman Empire.
And eventually she showed interest in music and dance, and her father was like, you know what, you should take lessons, and so he paid for her to have lessons, and they were very well off and living a very lavish upper middle class lifestyle. However, when Evelyn was 10 years old, her father died of a heart, like, they called it a heart event, probably because they didn't have the term heart attack yet. I'm not sure. I didn't look into it that far because we're here for Evelyn, not her father.
Yes.
And heart problem.
Yeah.
And
Heart problem.
it left them penniless. Like, so her mother and her brother all had to auction off all of their assets, get rid of everything. They had to move out of their home, and they began like whatever the 1800s, 1900s term for couch surfing was. That's what they had to do. So they were moving from like family member to friend to boarding house over and over and over again until somebody was able to gift Evelyn the mother enough money to buy her own house and turn it into a boarding home.
However, I
Evelyn...
was thinking of that time period's version of couch hopping, and I landed on Chesterfield hopping. Anyway, continue.
So they were living with family, they were living with friends, they were living in boarding houses. Eventually they had their own boarding house. However, in this boarding house, her mother couldn't bring herself to go ask for rent, so she would send Evelyn to go do it. Evelyn, the daughter. Evelyn, the mother, didn't have the temperament for this, so she immediately put Evelyn into this Evelyn, the daughter, into this position of having to basically be an adult at a very young age. This was on a weekly basis as well, because people typically in that day and age, they only stayed for a little bit. Like, it was very short term. Nobody was staying there for years and years in a boarding house. Boarding houses were supposed to be like halfway houses for people moving from one state to another just to get to New York or something like that, because everybody was going through Pennsylvania to get to New York. And eventually they did move to New York. But before that, Evelyn, the mother, got a job at a department store, and in an act of genius, in parentheses, sarcasm, Evelyn, the mother, managed to get Evelyn, the daughter, who was 14, and her brother Howard, who was 12 at the time, jobs there as well. And this was part of the circumventing child labor laws. And they were very lucky to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And in a department store, so it wasn't like they were in a factory where their arms would get cut off by machinery.
Obviously, that makes it all okay.
Yeah,
sarcasm.
Yeah, so privileged were they. These literal children.
Just imagining a 12-year-old saying Dracar Noir and then just spraying people.
Yeah. Cigarettes, Mentos.
It's like, you're a child. Aren't you here to buy candy?
I don't make enough money to afford the candy that I'm selling.
Yeah, I don't get off work. I don't get off work for another 5 days.
See, I'm just imagining a kid doing his best at Dillard's.
From 14 to about 16, she was working. Evelyn, the daughter, was working in this department store, and that is when a artist, illustrator, painter, came up to her, a female artist. So the female artist was struck by how beautiful Evelyn was at 14, 16. She wanted desperately to draw her, which, like, as an artist myself, I've had that moment where, like, I was in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class. I can't remember I think it was Aki Jiu-Jitsu class in college, and there was this girl in a cat suit who just, like, every time she moved, like, a new muscle would appear that I had never seen before, and I'm like, I want to draw you. So it's like, I completely understand where this woman is coming from. Evelyn...
and this is purely for curiosity. What BJJ class is it that they wear cat suits? Where is it located?
Violet
was located.
Yeah, Violet wants to know for science and art reasons only.
I just need to put it. I need to put it in the notes for the episode.
I'm 36 now. I was 18, so that would have been Schreiner University at 18 years ago.
Just get there.
Okay, they're probably still doing it.
Yeah.
18 years ago.
It's an hour outside of San Antonio, and the only thing to do there is go to San Antonio
and
watch the
BJJ class.
Yeah, and
watch the jiu-jitsu class.
So Evelyn sat for 5 hours and made a whole $1, which would be like the equivalent of like $30 today. So she was able to go out and buy herself some candy. And then this launched her modeling career, because that artist told other artists and other artists told other artists, and she just became incredibly popular in Pennsylvania. So that pretty much launched her career. It was just like a complete... I want to say that she was an incredibly lucky child, but it was both good and, like, equally good and equally bad. Like, all of the good things that happened to her came back to her in an equally bad way.
Already it's like you've had a bad thing happen and then things got a little better, but it's still pretty bad, and things got a little better, but you still shouldn't be worrying about that because you are a literal child, and that's probably a whole lot. And, like,
the fact that you're having a career at 14,
yeah,
you should be having a Dwink from
A
the.
Dwink.
You should be having a
You should be
Kool-Aid
playing.
and a cracker.
You should be on TikTok. You should be playing whatever game they're into now.
Fortnite.
I know it's not Fortnite. I'm 100 years old.
Roblox.
It's Roblox. Evelyn the mother liked to boast that she never let Evelyn the daughter model in the All Together. There are there are several.
That's a great band, by the way.
Yeah.
The All Together.
The All Together. There are several illustrations of Evelyn the daughter, either partially nude or showing her breast, or what one would consider the All Together.
And still a child.
Like, so far, like, what we know about Evelyn the mother is that she is both a helicopter parent and a neglectful parent. Like,
she very much is like the mom of a kid who is like a child actor.
Yeah,
well, at least I never let them do that. I only half let them do that. It could have been a lot worse. At least I didn't.
Right. Yeah.
They take credit for all the good stuff that happens and none of the bad. And
no,
just shove everything on their
she
kid.
does not get better as a person as we go along. So, despite all of this, her mother becoming her manager and all of that, Evelyn the daughter was going from studio to studio to be drawn or painted or photographed, etched into stained glass. All sorts of artists were lining up to like capture this essence of beauty that was Evelyn Nesbit. That was when Charles Dana Gibson shows up. You remember him from the beginning?
Oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So he used Evelyn as a model for one of his best-known Gibson Girl works, titled "Woman: The Eternal Question." It depicts the side profile of Evelyn with a well-kept pompadour. I wanted to state a well-kept pompadour because that was the hairstyle fashion of the time for women, and long.
Ooh, I googled it. That's some beautiful pen work.
That is really nice.
I am so envious of his lines. Like you can tell that it was done with like a very precise, like with precision care.
The hair,
just the hair alone.
The hair,
yeah, and. Like, she has long, luxurious curls cascading over her shoulder, forming the shape of a question mark. And so that is Evelyn Nesbit. Her whole life is a question mark. This poor child. Eventually, she got tired of modeling because all it was her sitting there having people draw her, and she was just, like, getting bored of it. So she wanted to do something more entertaining for herself, and that's when she turned to performing on stage. And she got involved with various men who would vie for her attention, keeping in mind that she was still 16 at this time.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So she was still at 16 at this time, but she was doing roles for actresses who should have been, like, in their 20s.
And it's not funny in the way that when I was 16, I did Steel Magnolias, and I played Weezer, Shirley MacLaine's character. I don't think it was wholesome and funny like that.
No.
It
absolutely
sounds like
was not. It was a girl who was so beautiful that she transcended age in the eyes of the director and the men who beheld her, not necessarily in. Yeah, it. Like I said, this entire story.
Men are trash.
Yeah.
If you're a man listening, we're not calling you trash directly. We're saying you have some work to do to speak to your gender.
So she would, she would get involved with these men. And so one of these particular men was Stanford White. And Stanford White is responsible for pretty much half of the grand architecture in New York. Like he is said to have built New York. Like, he was the architect for New York. And he was just head over heels in love with
this child.
This literal child. He endowed himself to her mother and got in her mother's good graces so that the mother would trust him with Evelyn alone. And I am not going to go into detail. I am not going to go into detail. But this became...
But we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, how the story goes, she Evelyn, the daughter, had a relationship with this man for well over a decade, starting when she was 16. And I don't... He was
I want to
30...
throw her mom. I want to throw her mom off of some of that man's architecture.
I want to throw them both off of that man's
I
architecture.
do, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, I put here, I'm not going to go into it, but if you want to look into her life, consider this a trigger warning. And it's like, I want to put as many trigger warnings ahead of instances as possible. She had many dalliances, one of whom was a polo player, of all things. But because with Stanford White, and them having a relationship for over a decade, he was 30 years her senior.
Oh.
So that's like, for me, that's the end of it. Like, it's not the end of the story by any means, but that's like, I wouldn't have any tie. Like, he was so beloved by her family that her younger brother Howard considered him a father figure. Like, that's how
He was... Sorry. So, let me get this straight. This kid says, my sister is dating a 46-year-old, and I think of him like my dad.
Yes.
My sister is dating this person that I think of as my dad, and there's nothing wrong with that. What the fuck?
Yeah. So, eventually, in one of Evelyn's stage plays, she performed in a play called The Wild Rose, and she here met the son of a wealthy railroad baron whose name was Henry Thaw. Not Henry, Harry. Harry Thaw had watched this play 43 times before introducing himself to her. So he had seen her on stage 43 times, and he was in his early 20s when they met. To talk about Harry just a little bit, because I really don't care for this man. Because remember, out of the 3 men that we talk about in this story, Charles is the only one that I would keep, and he's already on thin ice because he was a cishet man in the early 1900s. So,
yeah.
But Harry, who was pronounced mentally unstable since childhood, led a reckless, self-indulgent life, and he was just enraptured with Evelyn. And so there was a point, or Evelyn was actually warned against this man by several people who like knew him or knew his circle. Even like Stanford and her mother were both like, we really like, this is like the one thing that I agree on with these two. Like, I cannot agree with them on anything else, but I agree on this one. They did not like this young man. They did not like how like obsessive he was with her, how he was just trying to like wedge between her and Stanford, because at the time he suspected that they were in a relationship. Nobody could really prove it because Stanford was such a protected figure in society, to the point where it's just like, yeah, he has relationships with young women, but he also has relationships with men, and nobody bats an eye at it. Like, he was
they have to know how that's completely different.
Yeah. So he was really big into the New York gay scene, where it's like he wasn't closeted or anything like that, but he never like said anything about it. But he preyed on young girls, and most famously he preyed on Evelyn while he was married with children. Anyway, men are trash, and they always have been. There was a moment in Evelyn's life when she had to have an emergency surgery, but we don't know for sure what that surgery was for. However, it was highly suspected that it was an abortion. On the official record that her mother said, it was appendicitis. However, even Evelyn, the daughter's grandson, was like, no, it was an abortion. But what does he know? He wasn't even born yet. When she was going through this emergency surgery, Evelyn, the mother, could not get a hold of Stanford. Like, she just could not reach him at all, and she was panicking. And so she went and she, against her better judgment, contacted Harry. He's throwing all this money at her. He's just like, she's gonna have the best recovery that anybody who's ever had any surgery of any kind has ever had. Like, she's going to go to Europe. She's going to travel around the continent. She's going to come back like 100%, just absolutely perfect. And
she won't owe me anything at all.
And she won't owe me anything at all.
But also, thinking about the surgeries I've had, at no point do I wake up and go, yeah, I think international travel would really make me feel better right now.
No,
let me get on a plane that would hit the spot.
He was adamant that she would recover on a grand old tour of the European continent. And so, like, they went everywhere. And her mother was there as the chaperone, of course, just, like, mostly for, like, shits and giggles, honestly. It's like, oh, look, nothing can happen because her mother is here. And then we're like, but Stanford.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they went on this vacation, and it eventually, Evelyn, the mother, was, like, kind of getting suspicious about stuff. And she is like, hey, I really don't want to do this anymore. I think we should all go back. And Harry's like, okay, you can go back, but your daughter and I are going to finish this vacation. And so he just leaves with Evelyn, the daughter. It was while they were separated, she starts getting interrogated by Harry. And he wants to know everything. Like, he wants to marry her. Or, like, she's like, you have to marry me. Like, look at all the shit that I've done for you. Think about everything else that I can do. And she's like, I can't marry you. That's it. I just can't marry you. And he's just like, he is so incensed at this. This is when the physical abuse starts. Again, not going to go into details. She has 2 memoirs about her life that she wrote before her death in 1967, I believe. I mean, we'll get to there eventually, maybe. I don't know. She goes into detail herself. Like, she willingly gives that information. And it's the only reason that we know exactly what happened behind closed doors anyway. After that, Evelyn goes back to New York. She tells her friends about it, and they are adamant that she stay away from this guy. Just stay far, far, far away from this guy. Everybody knows he's no good. Stanford, who is the epitome of fucking douchebag, asshole, nonsense shit, is saying stay away from this guy when the Predator tells you to stay away from the alien, you know?
Yeah.
Even though that's an insult to alien. So...
I was gonna say.
Hey, don't go near that guy. That guy's fucked up. I know I fucked with you a whole bunch, but, like, don't go near that guy. He's weird.
Unfortunately, they got married.
Oh, God.
And Evelyn did not take kind to married life. She became the epitome of the proverbial bird in the gilded cage. Her mother had a horde of old Presbyterian women constantly around her, so she was, like, never alone. And to make up for what Harry had done to her in Europe, he's like, I'm going to live the life of a Benedictine monk, and I'm not going to touch you, and I'm going to praise you, and I'm going to let you live in my lavish house and live a lavish lifestyle, and you're going to have all of this wonderful stuff. For the most part, he did. Eventually, he became very paranoid against Stanford. He was insistent that Stanford had enlisted the help of a gang in New York to assassinate him. And all because Harry had been working with an anti-Vice douche canoe, Anthony Comstock, who was in a campaign and both of them were in a campaign to expose Stanford for the piece of shit that he was, because he was a piece of shit. But again, it's Predator versus Alien. Neither one of them are great. They both want to eat us. And this line of work was what made Harry paranoid, because he was just certain that Stanford was after him and was sending assassins after him. When really, Stanford was like, you're a fucking idiot, you baby-faced dumbass. And because apparently he had a baby face, according to the
baby-faced dildo.
Yeah, baby-faced dildo. Eventually this led to the night of the incident. It was 11 p.m. at the rooftop theater of the Madison Square Garden. Apparently there were 3 Madison Square Gardens, and I can't remember if Stanford designed all of them or just this one that he was at, because this was like his baby. It was Madison Square Garden 2, and that was his baby.
So he dated it, is what you're saying?
He dated it, yes. Yeah, he dated
Okay.
he dated Madison Square Garden 2. So he was enjoying the premiere of Mamselle Champagne by Edgar Allan Wolfe, not to be confused with Edgar Allan Poe, no relation. When Harry emerged from the crowd during the final number and shot Stanford 3 times in the head and back, killing him instantly.
Whoa.
Damn.
Yeah, just point blank, pow, 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 dead. And after like a moment of, oh shit, is this part of the show? Everybody was like, wait, that man is bleeding a lot. And everything was in chaos. And Harry, so there's a lot of speculation as to what Harry was yelling at this point, because nobody could say for sure. Kaz Rao on YouTube has a video about this, specifically about Evelyn Nesbit's life and the trial of the century. Spoilers, that's what this is this was eventually called the trial of the century. And she had this long diatribe that read like a manifesto. However, according to Wikipedia and a couple other sources that I read, nobody knew for sure what he was saying. It was either, you ruined my life, you ruined my wife, or it was the long manifesto of, you'll never touch that woman again, you blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on for like 5 minutes, and then the police get there and take him into custody. And it's like, I want to say that it's like, I ruined your life, or you ruined my wife, because Stanford ruined a lot of people's wives.
That sounds more like, yeah.
Yeah, and
that sounds like more like what I would imagine someone saying, but also it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Also, you just went brap on him. I don't think he's gonna hear a bunch more.
No.
After that.
So yeah, crowd was in chaos. Harry gets taken off by the police. Evelyn, who sees what the fuck had just happened, was like, I'm out. I'm not staying here any longer. So she goes and stays with a friend and just like hides there. Because she doesn't know if Harry's going to be let out and then he's going to come after her. Because this entire time, she was more afraid that he was going to kill her. Like, she had no idea that he would ever...
and now she knows he's capable.
Yeah, now she knows he's capable of doing that. So, like, she had no idea.
In front of a crowd
In front of a crowd. Like, this is some, like, Abraham Lincoln assassination bullshit. Like...
Yeah.
In one of her memoirs, she would say, a complete numbness of mind and body took possession of me. I moved like a person in a trance for hours afterward. Like, she was gone. Like, all of the trauma that she had faced up until this point just like accumulated in one fell swoop against her. So these next couple of paragraphs I'm going to read word for word because they're hilarious to me. I hate yellow journalism. I hate sensationalism with a fiery burning passion. Like, the way that these 2 paragraphs were worded, they're from Wikipedia. The way that they were worded, it made me laugh while I was reading them, and I have to read them word for word. As early as the morning following the murder, news coverage became both chaotic and single-minded and ground forward with unrelenting momentum. A person, a place, or event, no matter how peripheral to the killing of White, was seized on by reporters and hyped as newsworthy copy. Facts were thin, but sensationalist reportage was plentiful in the heyday of yellow journalism. 1 week after the killing, the film Rooftop Murder was released for public viewing at the Nickelodeon theaters, rushed into production by Thomas Edison.
What?
So Thomas Edison said, I just saw a dude get murdered. I'm gonna put that shit.
I want to make a movie about this shit. Yeah.
He liked to electrocute elephants and make snuff films.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
And then the next paragraph, the hard-boiled male reporters of the Yellow Press were bolstered by a contingent of female counterparts christened Sob Sisters or the Pity Patrol. Initially, female spectators were allowed to witness the proceedings. When the case came to trial, the judge banned women from the courtroom, accepting the Thaw family members and the female news reporters therein on legitimate business.
Oh, God.
Great.
But yeah, I needed to tell y'all that Thomas Edison was involved in this.
Yeah.
Even like,
That's
of course
wild.
he
yeah,
did.
of course he was. So now we're getting into the trial of the century. When it came to the trial, Harry's defense strategy was that of temporary insanity, so as not to take in his past history of being mentally unstable since childhood. Remember that part?
Mhm.
That was like the first thing we learned about him. I wrote, fun fact, temporary insanity was called a brainstorm during this era, but we won't be going into the etymology right now. His mother went to great lengths to hire doctors to be like, hey, he's not mentally unstable after all. He must have outgrown it. And so like upwards of like $50,000, I think, got paid to doctors.
Whoa, and back then,
That was a
Yeah.
massive amount of money. Like if $1 was $30 to Evelyn,
yeah.
That would be like $600,000 or something. I don't even know.
This is where, like, you thought Evelyn was shafted before. This is where she really gets shafted, because there were 2 trials, and both times the Thaw family successfully bribed her or tried to convince her monetarily. It's like, hey, we need you to make him look good and make Stanford look terrible so that he can get off, and then you're gonna get such and such amount of money. And so she would go onto the stage and she would be like, this is what happened. Stanford was terrible to me. Thaw was just protecting my honor and things like that. However, when she was walking out of that courtroom, she was completely alone. Like, not even her family. Like, her mother and her brother, gone. Like, her brother who saw Stanford, her brother who saw Stanford as a father figure blamed Evelyn, the daughter, for his death.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so like he wanted nothing to do with her, even though they had been so close in childhood. So she had to like endure this sea of reporters and anti-vice cornflake eating prohibitionist rhetoric, and everyone else gawking at her and like seeing how beautiful she was. And it's like, oh, she must be going through such a terrible time, being so beautiful, and this event is so harrowing, and how is she standing on her own 2 feet?
That's what people say every time I have a minor inconvenience.
Yeah.
She was all alone. Her in-laws were only there to be like, if you make him look good in the court, you will get money. If he is acquitted. Because if he's not acquitted or he goes to jail, you get nothing.
And with her history and her trauma, of course she's going to be like, things are not secure, I will take the money.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like, 100%. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, I mean, nowadays, I'd be like, fuck all of y'all. I'm going to tell you everything that fucking happened. I'm going to tell you shit that happened that has nothing to do with this trial.
Yeah, but understanding the cycles of abuse she was put through, starting from her mom.
Right.
Yeah, no wonder.
Yeah, like, her whole life, she had very little agency. And then she continued to not have agency throughout this trial. For both of those trials, she testified twice. So she had to go through it twice. And she had to testify on her relationship with Stanford, and the shit he pulled when she was a child. So she had to relive that in front of an entire crowd of people. And, like, SIA reporters, the jury, all of that stuff.
The press, too.
The press. Absolutely. Just
everyone
was
like,
there.
The reporter part would probably be the hardest, with how much they'd be like, check out this gal, this is probably her fault, we're gonna come up with a bunch of garbage about her just cause.
Yeah, and this was something, like, she had never told anyone what Stanford had done to her, except for when Harry basically tortured her in Europe. And that's when she told him what had happened. And so now she had to relive her second worst moment in her life. I don't know which one's worse. Like, they're both equally terrible. One, you both lose agency in both of them. And one of them is just, I cannot tell you which one is worse. A fun fact about this trial. This was the first time in American history where jurors were sequestered, meaning they were isolated and hidden away as they deliberated on the verdict.
Oh, interesting.
Like, this was the first time in American history that's happened. Because of the fame that these people had going into this trial,
Yeah.
they did not want the jury...
They didn't know if anyone could be tampered with.
Yeah, exactly. However, on the first trial, they emerged deadlocked. 7 voted guilty, 5 voted not guilty. But because of this, Harry was outraged because the jury didn't see the murder as anything but chivalrous as he did, thinking he was doing it to protect Evelyn's honor. So he should have been acquitted immediately because he was...
Oh my god.
He was...
So delulu.
He was so delulu. He was adamant that he was not guilty because he was doing this to protect the honor of his wife.
He couldn't milady any harder if he tried.
So...
Like, did he wear a fedora? He was probably born with one.
I mean, honestly, this was before the age of the fedora, but the fedora was close.
He's a trendsetter.
The fedora was close.
People said, "What the fuck kind of hat are you wearing?"
Yeah.
It's one that gives me respect to women most of the time.
In the second trial, Harry again pleaded temporary insanity and was found not guilty. He was sentenced to involuntary commitment for life in the Manhattan State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. He was rich as fuck, so he got all the accommodations that he asked for. He got to live fairly comfortably in prison. Eventually, he escaped and went to Canada.
Too much power for all the cornflakes they probably fed him.
Eventually, he escaped to Canada, but was brought back. Upon coming back and being tried for escaping from prison, he was declared sane and released.
Okay.
Because of...
Sorry. So he escaped. They put him on trial for escaping, and they said, "Ooh, actually, sorry, you were right."
Because of fucking
also,
course he was.
Well, I should also note, like, this is another time where they're using someone's mental health as an excuse for horrible behavior, because I'm of the mind that saying that, well, they're mentally ill, it's like, okay, so am I, but I'm not going to shoot a man in the theater.
Exactly.
Right.
Like,
Oh
there are plenty of people who experience the entire array of what, like, carceral mental health system describes as insane, in their words, that are not hurting people. And it always pisses me off when they're like, oh, not mentally well. It's like, so are a lot of people, but hurting someone else is a choice.
Right, exactly, yeah.
It blows my mind to this day. Like, if that happened again today, he wouldn't have been released. Like, and you can't try someone twice because of double jeopardy, but, like, he still escaped from prison.
Mm-hmm.
But because his daddy is a wealthy railroad baron. So that all happened in 1994. Or, like, because it was 7 years after the murder. Or 1994. Jesus Christ. 1914. He was released, and he was acquitted of all charges. He didn't go back to prison. The next year, Evelyn dumped his ass. Completely divorced him. I'm surprised she didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
And then she found, like, a modicum of success in vaudeville. And then eventually on the silent screen. So she continued her actress career. And a year after the divorce was finalized, she married her dance partner, Hack Clifford. Sorry, his name was Jack Clifford, but he might as well be called Hack Clifford. Because Evelyn was way more famous than he was, and he couldn't stand that. So he got his panties in a twist and was just like, I can't be married to somebody who's more famous than me. And they divorced 3 years later.
Oh, God.
Eventually, Evelyn and Harry reconciled and were on good terms by 1927. There were rumors that they intended to remarry, but Evelyn went on to become a burlesque dancer instead. So
good choice, Evelyn.
It's a fantastic choice. I love that choice for her.
For the best.
And it also said it's like she went to Panama to do this, but I couldn't find out if it was Panama the club in New York or Panama the country.
Interesting.
Cause it just didn't specify which Panama. So I want to assume that she didn't leave the States to go be a burlesque dancer in Panama, the country. I mean, she was like 55 eventually, like still doing this, still being a burlesque dancer, which, I mean, good on you, Evelyn. That's fantastic.
Hell yeah.
But she quit because she's like, I can't keep up with these younger girls. Honestly, who blames you? Who blames her? Eventually, Harry died, and Evelyn moved to California to be closer to her son, who I have not mentioned up until now because we don't know who the father of this son is. We don't know if it's Harry or if it's Stanford, mostly because he was born during the trial.
Whoa.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and Evelyn was just like, Harry, this is your son. And her in-laws were like, no, he's not your son. He is not Harry's son. There's no way in hell he could be Harry's son. So they basically just completely cut her and her son out of their life. We have no idea who the father is. I would like to say that it was Harry, because at some point in time, she did end things with Stanford, and they weren't being physical anymore, which didn't mean anything to Harry, apparently. So in California, she took up ceramics and sculpting and started teaching classes at the Grant Beach School of Arts and Crafts. And she was very successful at that, and it just became what she did. And then in 1955, Evelyn was on the set of a movie about her early life called The Girl in the Red Swing, starring Joan Collins as Evelyn.
Oh.
Unfortunately, Evelyn collapsed from exhaustion and eventually suffered a stroke that landed her in a nursing home where she passed away about a decade later at 82 years old.
What a life.
Despite
Yeah.
all of the shit that she went through, she still lived to be 82 years old.
The amount of things that she went through, and like, what a unique life experience that must have been, for all of those things.
And it was all sparked because I fell in love with Charles Gibson's artwork.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of immortalized her.
Yeah, he immortalized her, but even if he hadn't, this shit would have still happened. Like, Charles was just a footnote in Evelyn's life because of all the shit that had happened.
And I had no clue who she was before this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Thank you, Taryn.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Taryn.
This was a wild ride for me. Just going through it the first time and then watching like every single video I could find about it on YouTube, and then like verifying information and being like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah, and then you reach the Ouroboros of information where you start reading something new and you go, I already know this, I already know this.
Yeah.
I already know all of this. I already know that. Doubt. Now, I've learned all of it. I can.
I got to the point where I was like,
I've learned everything there is to know.
I was like going through some videos and going like, that never fucking happened, and then just closing out the video and going to the next one.
Yeah. That's me. That's
Right.
me with stuff about Scientology.
Yeah, well, a lot of times when I'm looking up a tech video, they'll be like, here's how you do this thing. And I'm like, no, I know an easy way to do that. Fuck you. And I close it.
My God.
Well, thank you, Taryn.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Taryn.
Hi, you've reached the housekeeping section, and it might be the housekeeping section of today's Lucky Winner, and it might be the housekeeping section of Infodumpies, because I am recording a housekeeping section far in advance because we are going to be moving, and I want to be able to have all of these episodes still coming out while we're moving, but I also do need to pack up things in my recording center station in my room, and I don't want to record bad audio for y'all, so this housekeeping section is going to be the same for probably a couple of months. I usually like to wait to record these until closer to the episode because I want our Patreon shout-out people to be up-to-date and accurate. But I think y'all understand that you'll get more episodes this way, and we don't have to pause anything to make you wait longer. And as soon as I'm able to record these closer to the date, I'm going to start doing that again. But in the meantime, here's the housekeeping section for a show. So if you like the episode of whatever show you're listening to at the moment, check out the episode details to find everyone's social media handles. You can find Mixnomer on Instagram at the handle Mixnomer Productions. If you're listening to today's Lucky Winner, all of the cast have their social media handles in the episode details, so you can see what we're doing on the interwebs. And if you want to support us, the best way you can do that is by sharing about the show. We don't pay for ads, and we don't take paid ads. So you sharing the show is the way we grow. Like, word of mouth is the way we grow any of our shows. So if you want to tell someone in your Discord server, in your subreddit, in the grocery store, I don't know, anywhere, you tell someone about it. It helps us out a lot. If you are in a place to help us monetarily, you can find a link to our Patreon for Mix and Elmer in the show details. So when you become a Patreon subscriber, you are subscribing to get content for any and all shows we make in perpetuity, and you get to support everything we do. It gets split among our cast members because we do profit sharing, and we try to make sure that everyone essentially gets the same hourly rate for their work. So when you become a Patreon supporter, starting at the $1 level, you can get access to our Discord server, where we do things like streams where we play Jackbox games, streams where you watch me and Violet play a video game together. I do body doubling. I started doing like a little Stitch and Bitch hour where we do different fiber arts and we just chat. It's like a virtual knitting circle. It's very fun. But when you do that, it's just at the $1 level. You get access to all of that. And then at higher levels, you get access to things like music from Today's Lucky Winner and live recordings of our Today's Lucky Winner episodes and all of the notes from me and Violet and our guests that they make for Infodumpies episodes that have a bunch of links so you can go learn more about a subject that you heard on an episode of Infodumpies. There's lots of cool stuff, and when you support us on Patreon at certain levels, you can also get a cool shout out, like our friends Randy Lovings, Rachel Rachelson, Sewing Seraph, B. Trossler, Smriti Singh, Helen Clifford, M. Mosen, Lucy, and Nicole Valdivieso. And if you haven't yet, it would be really helpful for us if you left a rating and a nice review to let people know that you liked our shows. It helps us get higher in recommendations and on different charts and get recommended to more people. Subscribing also does that, and it costs you nothing, and that helps us out a lot. So if you would like to support us in another way, that's another way you can help us out. But yeah, hopefully I will be having my recording set up at our new house when we get moved to, we're moving from Texas to Minneapolis, so that's going to be a big change. But once we get settled in Minneapolis and I have my recording station set up, these housekeeping sections will be bespoke per episode of show again, I promise. I feel bad cutting corners, and I feel bad that there's some people who might join our Patreon between now and then who might not get their shout out immediately, but again, I would rather get you shows in a timely manner than worry about that too much. I'm trying to not let my perfectionism take over. But that's all I got for you, little buddies. God, if you listen to Infodumpies and you don't listen to Today's Lucky Winner, calling you little buddies sounds condescending. But I promise it's not. But that's all I got for you now, little buddies. Until next time, try not to die. And if you're an Infodumpies listener and you don't listen to Today's Lucky Winner, my ending is... That's my ending. Okay, sorry.